Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Monitor Keeping Podcast. Alan Stevens, and I'm here with Kai.
How's it going?
What's up, Kai? Man, it's been a day just running around a little bit, but yeah, we'll jump right into this. Today, we're going to talk about incubation and all things incubation, just from incubators to what we use, what we're doing, what we've used in the past. But first off, we just want to say thank you again to the Morelia Python Radio Network. And guys, go ahead and go on MoreliaPythonRadio.com. There are a number of different podcasts on there, all with some great information, trying to cover things in a different light. So it doesn't just sound like, you know, this one's about carpet pythons, which was the beginning, of course. And this one's about monitors. But if you've been listening or checking it out, there's also the Reptile Fight Club, has a couple of episodes out right now where the hosts basically go over and talk about different sides of argument in a podcast, and actually it's pretty interesting stuff. So along with that, you know, there's Carpets and Coffee, Field Herping podcast, the Australian Herpetoculture podcast, Colibrid Corner. I hope I'm getting the names of these right too, Kai. I'm off the cuff.
Yeah, there's a multitude of different podcasts that you can find on the NPR network. So yeah, including ours. So
so check them out, go on the website. They're all there along with their store and the Patreon, and there's different memberships you can sign up for. All right. And so I get them all right. There's also Carpet Cliff Notes, Student of the Serpent, Humans of Herpetoculture. And I know there's more. Maybe Eric has to update the. Can I say that? Can I say that on the podcast? He has to update the rest of them. So, but yeah, everybody that's listening, if you like reptiles, there's something to learn. Even if monitors is your thing, believe me, there's a lot to learn when you hear some of these other guests come on talk about diet, the way that reptiles process food, the way that they, you know, just being a cold-blooded animal, different from us, and people that have a lot more experience with different parts of things. Some of these guys are doctors, are biologists, and been doing it a long time. It's really interesting stuff, and it'll add to more of a well-rounded skill set and knowledge of animals in general and what you're keeping, or maybe just the environments they come from. So I encourage you to go ahead and check those out. So other than that, Kai, what's new?
Hey, not much, man. Just kidding. No lie. All right, I got a lot going on with my monitor lizards still. I'm really getting into, I would say, more of full gear with some of my mangrove monitors. Yeah, as far as my highlight is the last couple weeks, I've had some Kimberly eggs. The Karen eggs that I have are currently doing good still. I'm just going to cross my fingers for those. They don't look turgid. They're, I think, like 70 days along now, 69 days. There are some that are only a few weeks along, but most of them, there's like a group of 6 or 7 that are 70 days along. And then I have my mangrove monitor stuff. The first part of that would be my Parthoak mangrove project, where I've taken the baby that I first hatched out and bred him back to the mom. That's my current pair. I actually adore that pair a lot, and they actually are breeding for me again. I just got a good clutch of 7 eggs. Yeah, they looked all good. Normally I'm hatching out 1 or 2 or 3 maybe. Rarely ever getting 100% hatch rate. And so that's what I'm going to shoot for this time, where I'm basically getting better eggs, clutches, more confident in what I'm kind of doing, more strict on what I'm doing as well. And so, yeah, those are my current highlights for the last few weeks. Just this last, I think they've been in the incubator for like 3 or 4 days now. And so, yeah, I'm really excited.
Good stuff, man.
What about you, man?
To hear it. You know, I'm right in that. I think that in between phase. I got the couple of first clutches of the season, really, and then, you know, it's when the females, they go through that process again, and they're swelling up and everything, and then, you know, you always have a timeline in your head of how things are supposed to go, and I'm right in that where I'm second guessing everything, and I'm like, are they gonna lay? Did I see it wrong? You know, she's swollen. Is she just fat, or is this happening? And so in probably another week or two, I'll have my answers. But it's just that in between.
Right.
So,
Sometimes you gotta wait for those extra weeks, right?
Right.
For whatever you think is gonna play out. So with most monitors, the gestation period and all that, and getting to from breeding to eggs can be very fast. And some dwarf monitors as fast as 12, 15, 18 days, right?
Yeah.
And some of these other bigger monitors, like 30 days. I mean, even the dwarf monitors can go as long as 30 days as well. But you kind of get what I'm saying, from anywhere from a couple week mark to the month mark is when they're going to lay. Now,
Right.
this leads us into our next topic, which is the eggs and incubating.
Right.
And so it'll be in a relationship between the two subjects in one podcast, mostly about incubators, but obviously our resulting products are the eggs and what we're trying to find the answers from. And so a lot of times you'll get very subtle details, and we're hoping to go over those today. So with that said, now I personally have gone through the motions as a keeper, and from when I was a kid till now, have made quite a few different incubators. Now, when I was really young, I was cheap, obviously, because you don't have a ton of money, and obviously you're not too skilled. And so what I did was I made an incubator out of a fish tank water heater inside a ice chest, inside of an ice chest, right?
Yeah.
And then created a moat, and then with bricks, and then set the eggs on top of the bricks, right? That's my moat style inside of an igloo, whether it's a plastic ice chest cooler or a styrofoam one. Either one worked for me. Now, I obviously wasn't doing monitors then. I was doing geckos and chameleons and things like that, spirited dragons, corn snakes, and so I would utilize those incubators. Now, across the board, incubators are going to kind of be the same. It's not really, there's the best one for monitor lizards, or there's a best one for this or that. Typically, it's just the heated environment, and what works the best is how controlled everything is. And so, going to say, I know people that are hatching expensive $1,000 monitors or whatever out of a regular ice chest, and I know people like myself and Alan that have ones that are built, and you spent $1,000 on or something like that, or how much ever they cost. And so, there's across this podcast, there's going to be your do-it-yourself type and the one that you are buying, and then you're kind of modifying or just trying to learn in a sense as well. So, starting off, what are like bad incubators and what are good incubators? I find that the smaller and tinier they are, the faster they overheat. So they can be any type.
Yeah.
The smaller they are, they just overheat much faster. Now, like let's say a hot box that's small, that's a much more well thought out incubator rather than a little, I think it's an Exoterra or a Zoomed incubator where it's literally like 12 inches by 12 inches by like 2 feet tall, something like that.
That's with the front opening door. That's the Exoterra one.
Yeah. And that's garbage. I've gone through a couple of those myself. I've gone through the original one and the one that they said that they did better. And both basically were horrible. And what I mean by horrible is inconsistent in temps. And so nothing would match the actual dial. Right. The dial on the unit would not match the temperatures that were inside the unit. So, I just gave it to somebody else or chucked it. And you can gut it, put your own thermostat in it, and then learn how to rig it then. But even then, it's not worth it because it's very small. So you're looking at 2 clutches or something like that. So it's not really feasible for someone with a lot of eggs or a lot of incoming eggs quite regularly, Right. Now, a couple that are so-so, I would say, is like little hover baiters or the ones with the top heat, right? Those
Yep.
were great for me. Where all the bearded dragons, chameleons, leopard geckos, all that stuff like that, would do great in those. I never really hatched monitors out in those, so I couldn't say. But I do know a gentleman that does hatch them out in them. And
I've used, just to interrupt real quick, I have used that for monitor eggs, and currently using it for. I've used it recently for some snake eggs, and right now it's actually right there behind me. If you can see it, Kai.
yes, I see it. Oh, that's the heat one with the radiating top heat, right? It's got like
right.
wires up there. Now that one's a
Yeah.
pretty decent one as well.
Yeah.
I got a lot
And
of.
so I use that.
friends.
Yeah, I use that for certain things at the house, and usually it's my cooler animal, but I have used it for Ackies in the past, and actually it's worked pretty good. So but I was very diligent about checking on the humidity and where it was in the room and everything, which we'll get more into as we go. But
Right.
yeah,
Now, going for just other types of incubators that are, I wouldn't say all that bad, right? It really now it just depends on the whole room and the atmosphere of everything. The outside temperature, the room temperature, if you're going to run AC or not, if it's in the draft, if it's in front of a window, if it's in a room that stays 85 degrees, as opposed to a room that's only 60 degrees, so there isn't, I've seen people that, let's say we're going to take Hotbox, for example, right? It is the one that a lot of us are using. I myself are using, Sim Container, a few other people are using, a lot of snake keepers are using. Don't get me wrong, I actually really like it. I like the product. So far, I haven't hatched anything out in it, but I like what I'm seeing so far as far as what I've upgraded from, which was the the whole mini fridge, and that's what I just currently left. So I was having basically just a mini fridge that was around, I think, 18 by 18 by 36 tall, that roughly size, and I put it on a herb stat, drilled my holes, gutted it, things like that, and that's what I was using for actually a couple years. And then I just upgraded to this because the front door on that current incubator that I was using busted. So I was like, all right, I'm at the show. I might as well. I just fell in love with it because I needed a new one, and I didn't want to build another one. I wanted something that was just maybe more fail proof. I don't know. With the fan built in and all that other stuff, So I didn't have a fan. I was just running it, and don't get me wrong, I was still hatching monitors out of it. It's just I was having hotspots and all this stuff like that. Now going back to the comparison with just the one brand itself between amongst other people, it works differently where you live and where you're at. So let's say you're in somewhere that's really humid and or the room is really humid. Your fan may not affect your stuff so bad, right? And we're talking about the same incubator. But let's say where I'm at, where it's really dry. And today even, maybe 15, 20, 25% humidity outside. So that sets a tone for what's in the house as well. It's basically, unless I run a humidifier, it is also dry. And running a fan on top of that is basically going to dry it out even more because the air will just suck out moisture naturally as what it's going to do. It'll suck out the humidity in there. And so, going back and forth with just the same hot box and different keepers, basically people are reporting, I'm not having great success, or that's exactly it. They're having some failures and some glitches here and there within either the incubating process or the hatching process. And like myself, I can really only use myself as a clear example, but within the old incubator that I was using and my current one, I'm not able to hatch out Kimberly rock monitors, and I'm trying to figure out why. So, really just trying to figure out the humidity levels, the moisture levels within the container, and then what's inside the box. Let's say going with my normal sim left on the grid and just the normal 1-to-1 ratio at the bottom, my eggs were drying. So what I would do is then add much more water to the bottom. And that's what I was incubating initially. So it'd be kind of slushy at the bottom. And I would use perlite, vermiculite, the mixture of the two. I would even use moist eco earth and just keep it soggy down there. It's anything that's just going to retain moisture should be able to work within the sim container. And so another thing that I was doing is I was also scared to use just standing water because of just how much humidity was developing within the container itself. So then I went with just enough moisture within the soil where my eggs were actually at the point of deflating because they were so dry. So then I found my very low point. And that's where I'm understanding now. Even if I'm failing and I'm messing up, and sure, it's not ideal to have them go to this point, but now I know where my lows are. Right. And so this tells me, okay, it's if I'm at the bottom, only other direction now is up. So I'm going to be adding more moisture and just cued it in just so they are humid enough. And that's where I'm finding now my balance, sort of, in a sense, if you would say, I don't have too many eggs go too turgid, which means basically they are now a ping pong shape, right? And they've become discolored, almost clear rather than the typical white that's hard to see through. It's become opaque, things like that. Those are signs of being turgid. And essentially it's just soaked up a whole bunch of water. And it looks like instead of looking like an oval egg, it now looks circular. And so those are some signs that you really don't want. Hopefully rather have the other normal oval shape. But some people have the balance of that, and it's like just opening the little bit more or letting them breathe. But some people don't, and the eggs actually just die, and the babies die and drown within the egg. And so that's a real tough one. And having to swallow that pill after you've gone through all the work and stuff like that is heartbreaking. So that's why we're having this podcast, because currently, like Mike or myself or other keepers, we're killing babies. We're not really having hatch. And so they're breeding, laying a ton of eggs, all that stuff like that. But the very last leg of incubating, it's like the eggs do very well too. They go to all the distance, have all the signs and things like that. So, even within the same incubator, people are having problems, where at the same time, people are also having success. So you can't really knock one all the time. It really just depends on how people are working them, It really depends.
I actually have that going on right now, where I have a clutch of Aki eggs, and they are kind of ping pong shaped. They still look good. Everything's going good. But instead of I was just trying to vent them for a couple weeks, a little more regularly when I open the door and just lift the corner of the top. But what I ended up doing is just switching the top on the sim container that I'm using, and the additional top that I have just has holes in it, basically. So I know that there's constant ventilation and hopefully an exchange or an easier exchange of gases and whatnot, and letting that moisture out. So they are looking a little better, and there's no signs that anything's going to go wrong right now. I think I was able to get on it soon enough.
And what's stuff we can't really find out until that last leg, like the last few days. Sometimes it's like, okay, I had eggs look great on like day 105 or something, and then 110 I looked at them, they were dark, and so I cut them, and they started smelling and all that stuff, and they were great for all 100 days, and then then not. So it's heartbreaking. Yeah, it's heartbreaking.
Oh yeah. But what's also kind of interesting is it's the first time I've had this specific issue, even though I've used this same incubator and this same sim container in the past for, identical eggs, you could say. I've used it for other clutches of Ackies and Tristis and never had a problem with it. But for whatever reason, this clutch is wanting to do that. So I don't know where to unless I mix the soil or the substrate a little differently, which shouldn't be the case either. I'm pretty, regular about it across the board, but it's just what I'm seeing. It's what's going on with this clutch. So adjust as necessary.
What about more humidity in the room? Remember you said you changed that?
I did. So it is a little more humid just because it's so hard in the winter to keep humidity. It just sucks
Right.
humidity
It's
out,
so
even though I
dry.
have the
Yeah.
humidifier going. Yeah. But in
Yeah.
the summer, because it's warmer, the air's, trapping more humidity. So I guess that could be a problem or an issue that's leading to this. But it's hard to say or pinpoint because I also have, a few other clutches and identical containers going right now. One was laid around the same time, and there's no problem whatsoever. So it's I don't. It could just be this one container. The top fits a little tighter, or
So weird, huh?
yeah.
Mm.
I couldn't tell you, to be
In-
honest. So
Inside my incubator right now, I have 4 or 5 tubs in there, right? Which I'm
mhm.
very blessed to have, by the way. They're not the same. Neither of them look the same. One is more condensated than the other, and
Mhm.
then one is not at all, and then condensates on the roof, and then um, the bottom row, the left side as well condensates, and then the other one doesn't. And I actually have a paper towel in that one currently, so it should have
Yeah.
much more going on, right? So I have no idea, man. And so I'm just looking at the egg. I click on the light, lift up my little, oh yeah, what I've done, because I have to run the AC now and I don't want the draft to affect the thing. I've had to buy
Mhm.
the purple styrofoam, and then I just made a L around the where the draft would hit, and I just
Yeah.
cover the front and the side wall where the air would normally hit through. So um,
Gotcha.
hopefully I think that's helping, because I'm noticing less condensation on that current wall
Well,
of
that's awesome.
the wall. So I think it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. Now get like, man, as far as the whole, it's crazy. It's just no. There is, like, people are hoping for like something so cut and paste, right? Or something
Mhm.
just so black white, but no, it's so many gray areas, or more so just different details, and that'll just really affect your whole thing. And so you kind of want to be able to go through. You have to go through a whole lot. Now it's not just the incubator then. And we talked about air temperature outside the room, within the outside, and all that stuff like that. If the AC is on, if the heater's on, if the room's this temperature at like 85, or if the room's a lot colder, But now we're also talking about pressure and gas.
Yeah.
Now this I don't understand too well, only because I haven't studied it enough yet, and I don't understand just how the process works. But I do know just what I know from facts of like what I'm seeing, right? And when it's a colder night, or when I'm incubating in wintertime, my containers are condensating much more, and that's because the incubator is warm, but the room is cold, and
Mhm.
so what's happening is I'm not sure if you want to help explain this part, but the condensation is from just all the pressure buildup, right?
Yep.
And or the heat buildup as well. And so
Yep.
it's working against it. And it's doing this much like you would have a hot cup of tea, and you would put saran wrap over it. And basically that heat is bubbling with inside there. And then it's creating that condensation on top of that saran wrap in there. It's an example of what the heat and all that pressure does when it's trapped in a little container, you know.
Right. I would
Um,
say for a lot of people, it'd be as easy the very unscientific way because I'm in the same boat as Kai. I don't understand a lot of it or all the fancy terms, but I think we can all understand that if it's cold outside and you get into your car and before you start it up, if you just sit in your car for a little bit, you're getting condensation all over. Your windows are fogging up, and then you turn on that defroster. That's hitting the windshield basically and drying out that condensation or not allowing that condensation to form on there. So, in a sense, if you use that as kind of the idea, there's something warmer. Or eggs do give off heat. Okay,
it's warmer in
um,
the car than it is outside, right?
right.
Or warmer in the baiter than it is outside, right?
And you're causing that moisture then to collect on you could say the container you have them in, which is like the car, and then you're having to deal with that issue inside of that container itself and how it's going to affect the eggs. Okay, so that can represent itself in different ways, and sometimes it causes problems for people. For me, if I see a moderate amount of condensation, it doesn't bother me too much just because I'm used to seeing a certain amount in my containers.
A little bit, right.
Right.
I'm normally used to seeing the front a little bit and one of the sides, but let's say if they're all condensated or the whole roof is wet, I'll wipe it down. I'll give it a little. I try not to be so invasive and just keep the thing open for too long. It's a quick lift, wipe, shut. Maybe a quick picture, but yeah, just,
yeah.
You want to keep it swift. Keep it swift.
Right. So that's kind of what we're trying to get across, just so people can get that picture in their head without all the scientific terms. Is kind of a simple explanation. I don't know if I should go back a little bit. So I've used, as far as incubators, I've used the one I mentioned, the ZoomEd incubator, without any issues. I've used a product that's very much like the Hotbox. And I'm using some custom built incubators. And actually, a friend is still using that Hotbox one. He was in a pinch and needed something, so that went to him. He did some different modifications on it, and just so I reiterate, it's not a Hotbox. It's like a Hotbox, right? So,
and there's quite a few across the states now. So
right. So it's still in use, and for the most part, for all these different incubators that I've had some decent success with. But I think you have to pay attention to not only the container itself that you have incubating, but then you also have to pay attention within that container. Sometimes one side of the container is a little different than the other. And eggs, like I've had eggs start to dent on one side of the container as opposed to the other side of the container. And so, how I fix that is placing a damp paper towel over the eggs that are starting to dent, and it kind of gives it that extra buffer. And some other ideas we've talked about in the past, but to talk about here is to also, I realized that there was more heat on the backside of the actual incubator, even though there were fans moving to push that heat around. That clear front,
warmer, right? The back is just still warmer.
And the clear front, usually like an acrylic that we want to look through, it's cooler. It's closer to the room temperature than the heat that's being put out by the actual heating element on the back. So there can be a variance or gradient going on there of both temperature and humidity. So, ideas that we've had to do is just throw a towel over the front of the incubator. It helps trap that heat in. It acts as kind of another wall. And it traps that air a little bit, that air space in between there, which stays a little bit warmer than the rest of the room. And so sometimes they're not big modifications. We've both been in that panic state where it's like eggs are going bad. What do we do? And I think, no, truthfully, we still freak out if stuff starts going bad. But we've had a little time to have some different things pop up where it's like, okay, I'm freaking out, but I've seen it before a little bit, so now I know kind of what to do, some different things to try. But for those new breeders out there, maybe your monitor is dropping eggs for the first time and you're freaking out. Just take a breath. The truth is, the truth is you might mess it up. Okay,
right, and that's okay.
Might,
I mean, it does suck, but it's like the learning experience that you want, right. You find answers, or you pick people's brain like me and Alan's, and, you essentially maybe come up with some conclusion on what happened. Right. That's, as best as we can, a lot of signs are tall tale signs where they're quite regularly in occurrence. And so we can all relate, and it's very much the same situation. But there are, if someone is withholding some information on truths or exact temperatures that they don't understand or know about, and or not paying attention to some stuff that they can't attribute to what is currently going on. Like it's not that you're not paying attention. It's just you don't know yet. And so, well, you really can't be putting it all together. Like, for example, I wasn't understanding how, man, they told me to vent my eggs, but I was doing it too much. So now I'm drying them out. And, it's like, all right, I messed up. And I had to learn that for myself. Even if it was a recommendation for somebody else, it wasn't for me. And so I no longer do that so much, maybe a little peep, but I no longer take out, like, I no longer even wipe the sides. I just wipe the lid. I still need the condensation on the side, because what happens is it's that pressure and humidity is as we're talking about it condensating the walls and the roof of the sim container or the egg container that you're using, the whatever it is, right? It's sucking it out of where it is, and that's in the bottom. And so I'm essentially losing moisture throughout the period if I'm just always wiping it down. And so I only wipe down the lid just a little bit, nothing crazy anymore. I still that condensation form and all that stuff like that, just because that's still natural. I don't want to be taking out too much water.
I think a lot of it is, just unfortunately, I do think we're incubating monitor eggs for a longer time than other eggs.
That are
in my own
months.
Right. In my own limited experience, snake eggs are easier to hatch. Now, that's only been with some colubrids and carpet pythons, but they were much easier to hatch than or they were much shorter to hatch. Yeah. It was kind of like set them and forget them to a certain point. I did have a couple eggs go bad on me, but it was like 1 or 2 out of a large clutch.
Yeah.
So I was thinking those are more the outliers than the, what was really going on. Most of the eggs were good. But with monitor eggs, you might mess up that first one. Okay. But realize
seasons.
Yes. Realize you have a monitor. You have a female. If it's fertile and you had 2 in there, and there's a good number of them that looked good. You had a male, or you saw them lock up. The sexes of your animals. These are all good things. And if your female is eating and recovering, she might look skinny, a little dehydrated, but if she's eating and recovering, guess what? You're probably going to have a number of other chances to mess around and get it right. So remember what didn't work and address it, ask some questions and address it for the next time, because you're doing something right if you got her that far. Okay. So don't give up hope and realize that, you might mess up the first one or 2. It happened.
Yeah. Wow. So, okay. For back to the beginning, I don't want to get too far into crazy details. Yes, you just on more stuff, right? But I wanted to kind of flow for people, especially the beginners that are going to want to breed. Now, your incubator, I'm not just going to say this is important, but you need to run your incubator for several months or maybe even quite some time before you even put your eggs in. This is just good common practice. You get an idea on what your temperatures are, run it, day and night, have it on. There's no eggs in there. Run it with containers inside, with the humidity in there, with the moisture in there, with your cup of water in there if you have a fan, things like that. If if you have it in a draft area, maybe think about moving it. If you have it in a doorway, window area, think about moving that area. Something like that. What I had to do for mine is I just put styrofoam on one of the walls that kind of gets a draft, and so hopefully that'll help out a little bit. But get an idea on what your thing is like and adjust with it. Right? Build your incubator. Now, this is where we get into just modifying your own little mini fridge or whatever you feel like. Right? You're basically having some type of reservoir for water or that'll create humidity or some type of heat and humidity. Okay. Now I used example earlier of a fish tank water heater inside water at the base of an igloo. That's a ice chest, right? And set a moat in there. But now let's get into something a little bit more, I guess, more modern or more kind of newer style, because a lot of people are still building their own incubators right now, and that's still the regular recurrent usage. Not everybody is actually going and spending a lot of money on an incubator. People are getting a regular mini fridge from Craigslist Marketplace off the side of the road, some free market, whatever. It's just a busted old mini fridge that's not working anymore, some wine cooler, right? And what you're going to do is gut it. Take everything out of it. If you can, remove any extra inside stuff. Take out anything that is going to utilize more room than it needs to. Basically, you're gutting it. And then you get down to the drainage hole. Every refrigerator, wine cooler should basically come equipped with one. And you're going to use your drainage hole as where you're going to run your cords through. Now, obviously, it's not just going to fit through the current drainage hole. So you're going to have to get a screwdriver or an actual drill with some type of hole maker that can basically penetrate through hard plastic or metal, because that's what the typical inside is. And then you make a hole where that pilot hole already is for the drainage thing. So there's already a hole there. It's basically going to be an easy press through, and you'll have your inch-size diameter hole for you to run your cords through. And your cord, your probe, your fan things or whatever, all that was going to run basically through there. But that hole, leave it open. That'll be your pressure exchange release hole. Okay, you can make another one, but that is where some air exchange is going to happen there, and it's not going to be exchanging and releasing too fast, but it allows some pressure to be released easier as you're opening and closing it. So, example, for my current hot box, at the very top where I run the probe through, it's a little hole, roughly about half an inch or maybe 3/4 of an inch for cords to run through, and basically air flow exchange to run through as well. So that is all. It's all working together, whether it's your cord running through and also airflow running through. Okay, now I use just the Zoom Ed heat pad. You can use flex watt tape. You can use reptile cable wire. That's the what is that? The heated rope,
heat
right?
Cable. Yeah.
Heat cable, right? And you can basically snake it all along the back and the bottom and the sides of the walls. Hook any of those heating elements up to a thermostat. We're using a pulse thermostat or the right, and what's the other one? The other
you have the what is
we're not using.
You have your on off. You have your pulse, and the other one's like a dimming type of.
Yeah, so I'm using the pulse one. The words really skip my mind, but I really wish I had them. But there's a couple of different types of incubator. The thermostats, and we're using the pulse one. And so I have currently a Herpstat on mine. I use Herpstat Pro. The intro is good enough. It's for me, it's great. It gives me a warning when things are off or overheating. It shuts off, stuff like that. It's very efficient. I like it. Now, it's 2021. There are very many more thermostats out there than we know exist. Just so many people are developing on their own. It's connected to an app, to your phone, to a tablet, to whatever, but basically it's connected to your Wi-Fi, hooked up, all that, things like that. And those are all within a touch of a button on your phone, and things are controlled or things are monitored in a sense, but you are also at the mercy of the internet and Wi-Fi. So you want to make sure that that's always good and running. For me, I don't have mine hooked up to that. It's just the unit is hooked up itself. Getting yourself a decent thermostat from Vivarium Electronics or Herpstat Pro or Helix or something like that. Those are all very good working ones. When I first started, I used to use the $30 Jumpstart off of Amazon. And that worked until I needed to be more precise. And so those temperatures, what would happen would be, it'd be incubating between 81 and 84 rather than being more stable with the Herpstat. So, now still with the herpstat, it fluctuates 1 major degree, right? But not 4 or 5. So what's working better now for me is the more controlled unit. And really, that's your whole shell and makeup of your incubator. It's the actual shell itself, and then your holder run your quartz through, and then your thermostat, your heating element, and then if you have a fan, some people hook up a fan. I didn't at first, but now I do have one in the hot box that comes with it. That fan is to help with hot spots. So we'll have top of the incubator, back of the incubator, maybe different temperatures than the bottom and the front. So the fan is basically there to circulate the air a bit and keep all the temperatures roughly the same. But I still find a couple hot spots with the in the back of the enclosure, in the back of the incubator. That's just because the heating elements there. It's just obviously going to be a lot hotter. And so, yeah,
what
my shell.
While we're talking real quick about those incubators, I have herp stats on my main incubators I'm using now. But because of some bad experiences along the way, not the current setup that I'm using, but some other ones, I had an incubator kind of nuke some eggs of mine. And I was using one of those Exoterra thermostats on this one. Okay. Don't use those for incubators. Don't use those. It's nothing against Exoterra. They weren't made for incubators. Don't use those. So that being said, now with the herp stats, I still have those connected as a failsafe to the herpstat itself is plugged into an on-off thermostat that's set at 90 degrees. If it gets higher than 90 degrees, because the herpstat has a memory in it, so it's going to revert to the temperature I had it set at. The on-off, I mean, it's a simple $35 on-off. If it gets too high, it shuts everything off. All right. And I've never had to my knowledge, it's never had to shut off, but it's there just in case. Because the worst feeling in the world is walking in and seeing that readout be 113 degrees and all your hopes and dreams are basically shriveling away. So,
yeah, man, I handed you those hopes and dreams.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. That's how I treated them. No, of course, there was no intention there, but
crazy learning experience, though.
Yeah.
It's just eye-opening, and that's heartbreaking at the same time. And really, I don't want you guys to be discouraged, but like the saying goes, fail better. And for many years I've not only tried practice, but I'm really failing even now. Like a lot of people look up to me for what I'm currently doing in the monitor game or stuff like that. But like most people want me to be their teacher and their guide, but really I'm a student myself still, just trying to learn as much as I can with what I'm faced with, and I have a bunch of eggs that might be not doing so great. Now, hatching out mangroves, not so much of a problem for me. The bigger eggs seem to do really well within the whole sim container and the other incubating containers that I've used. I've only really used sim for monitors, but I've used Tupperwares and shoe boxes that breathe a little bit and all that other stuff for many reptiles. So all of those containers really work. Now, getting into our favored, and a lot of people in the whole community actually love these containers. The sim container is still, I believe, one of the best made ones, and or also takes the math work out of some stuff. The suspended incubating seems to be helping out a lot of animals that may have been having a hard time to hatch before, and so it's really a good product. And John and Alex do a great job of really having people understand what it is and things like that, and hopefully we can reiterate what they're talking about with using the sim. It really is different for many different species of animals across the board, from snakes and tortoises and things like that to monitor eggs. They're all incubated a little bit differently. I don't use when I was incubating like bearded dragon eggs and stuff like that in Sims, and I had corn eggs in Sims when I first got them, even before I was doing monitors like that, just other stuff. I didn't really have air holes or anything like that. I just popped one little thing in the lid, one very tiny hole, because this was my spiel the whole time. Actually, growing up doing chameleon eggs for that incubated for 6, 7, 9 months, and other eggs that were just a couple more months. I would use typical Tupperware containers and poke only one hole in the lid, and that was it. That's all the air exchange that it had. And I would open it once every few days or something like that and take a peep at it. But really, that was it, And my ratios would be old school, just 1-to-1, or more so of I pour water in and then squeeze out all the extra water. Yeah, that's what I was doing before. But now we're doing things a little bit differently with the Sims. And don't get me wrong, I actually really, really like them. All my current containers are Sims now, but I have them used a few different ways. I'm basically using them as a container because I really like the usage of the container. But at the same time, some are on the grid, some are on Turfis, which is that Rapashi hatch stone stuff. I have some eggs on that, and I have other eggs on top of a grid that are above just moist perlite. So I'm kind of using a few different things. If the sim container seems to be the problem, possibly, I may have to change and go either back to the Tupperware type of container or the shoebox container. Just because I just want to see what other results I can get. Obviously I'm using only Sims right now. Not to say that that's the issue at all. I don't think so, because I'm hatching current eggs within the Sim myself. It's something else. And so I have to try to figure all that out, even within the Sim, using the Sim container itself. But eventually, I want to get some smaller shoe boxes and use those as well. Use a 1-to-1 ratio within the shoe box. See how that works. Pay attention to the moisture levels, and or more so of like the shoe box. When you pop it on, there's the seam that doesn't really close 100%.
Right.
It leaves a little bit of air exchange, and so you just really popping it on. You don't even have to make holes within that lid because it's there. The vents are sort of already there within the creases. But let's say you use something that's snap shut airtight, you may want to not even pop a couple holes, but you're going to have to melt a couple holes into that lid and get you some possible air exchange. You may not leave those air holes open, but what it is it makes them available so you can tape it and adjust it accordingly. That's what I think both Alan and I do. I have 5 holes, and I cover most of them, leaving some air exchange. Maybe when I need to, I'll unleash and undo 4 of them, something like that, right?
I have those ready, set up to go. They're basically on top of the incubator. I start off with your standard top, and then I have an additional set of tops that already have the holes melted in, and then a roll of electrical tape on standby right there too. And it's just what I've got together. They're all right on top of the incubator, so I can plug and play as I see clutches developing and maybe what they need and adjust accordingly to that. So
what are you using right now, bro, on different mediums? I think I mentioned like 3 or 4 that I'm currently using. By the way, it was perlite, vermiculite, moist damp eco earth, and turfis, which is the little red pebbles from Rapashi.
Right now I'm using the turfis for the most part across the board.
Solely, right? Because you found good success with those.
I have, yeah. My thinking behind it was basically along the lines of I'm going to get used to known products. So sim containers, turfis, and I like the turfis specifically because you can actually sterilize it, you can boil it, and reuse it. So it's a little more cost effective. But I also I get to know those products and how they work together, and that's how I approached incubating in these new incubators and with more species and more animals in general. Was okay. There might be a period of messing everything up, but I'm going to stick with these known products so that I can, instead of trying to say like, well, I had problems, so throw the turfis out, grab perlite. and then, oh, I have another problem, throw the sim container out, grab another container. Instead of doing all that, I thought it was simpler for me to use two products, stick to it, and just get the ratio of maybe water right. And then, like we've talked about already, venting the sim containers the correct way in my specific setup. And so that's how I approached it. Fortunately, I've had very good luck. The incubators that I got, that's another story, but basically they were used for years and years and years to hatch out a lot of python eggs. And so they had a very good track record. So using all these notes, so I know I had an incubator that worked. I wanted to stick with the sim containers. Obviously, they're well used, or they're well known in the monitor community. And then just picking a product. I mean, I could have done it just over water, but I wanted to try it with a medium. And one of the reasons also was because if things were too wet, I wanted to be able to lift up the tray that's in there, put it into another sim container that was a little bit drier of the same material. Or if I needed to actually put a layer of dry stuff on top of the existing turfus, just to play around with and see if it worked, or just to have the ability to adjust with these different ideas. Fortunately, whether it's been really wet turfus or what I normally use, the normal, like, oops, dropping stuff over here, okay. What I have been using, I've had good luck so far, other than I'd say, what's going on right now with the little ping pong ball Aki clutch, but those are those are evening out too. And yeah, it's just what's worked for me. Now, that being said, in the exact same incubator, I've also used their, I guess the best way I could describe it is for all those food preppers out there, you probably know these containers. They're clear containers where you can snap down the sides. And then there you have very small pinholes, one on one corner, one on the opposite corner. And those were just, I mean, man, I would say maybe a quarter of an inch of perlite in this stuff across the bottom. They seemed like they were just slightly moist perlite, and the eggs were just placed on top in there. And all of those hatched out. I mean, I think that was, I think it was seven clutches of Aki eggs, different clutches, and they all hatched out fine. So as long as the eggs look good, they hatched out fine. If they were bad eggs to begin with or questionable, maybe some of those didn't go, but I don't think that had anything to do with the container or perlite or turfus or whatever. I just think those were bad eggs from the start. So I've had a lot of success just with both. So I think both work, but I've since retired those containers. They're on standby if I need them. But they actually they're in gargoyle gecko setups now, or they're what I'm using for the gargoyle gecko eggs. But as far as the monitors, they're just in the sim containers, and I'm just going to use those and figure out how they work for me, and just continuation of like you pointed out, Kai. I'm going to add this to basically the bank of knowledge as far as, the season's changed and it is more humid. I've added a humidifier to the room that now that the season's different and it's a little warmer in there, maybe there is an excess of moisture to some degree. Now, I don't see it in the rest of the eggs that are in there, but it could just be that container itself. Maybe the top, like I said, fits a little tighter. Maybe I'll mark it with a Sharpie or something, just so I know that one, right on it, vent or needs ventilation. So, just making these little adjustments just for me. I wish I could tell the listeners out there, here's what you need, and it's going to work perfect. That's not the case. But I will say this: you can pick shoe boxes. There's plenty of guys that have done stuff in shoe boxes. There's plenty of guys that have used other types of containers. But there's a lot of experience out there with the Sims. Also, Alex and John being monitor guys, they can help you. They can respond to something. And there's a lot of other people that use it just across the reptile community with a lot of success. So there's a good amount of knowledge that is accessible to you because they're a known product, and it's you could ask a question or say my eggs are doing this, and someone might have the answer you're looking for, or has dealt with the same problem.
Yeah.
So it definitely has that bonus.
Quite a few guys actually. A lot of the guys that are, I mean, myself, just a year ago or even 6-7 months ago, I was having these issues and trying to really figure them out, and I'm still trying to figure them out now. I'm just waiting for the results now, and so I'll see how my eggs turn out. Now, I guess getting into some more part of this conversation, because like you said, basically a lot of it overlaps, with eggs and the whole containers and the incubator. It all works out. Now, I personally use temperatures of 84, 85-ish. I don't really go anything above that. I first started off at 81 too. It's just natural me because I used to hatch a lot of chameleon eggs out first, and I would start them off a lot lower just because the eggs themselves incubate for typically like 9 months or a lot longer. And so they'll go through many seasons rather than just staying at one temperature. So I started off at 79, 80. My monitor eggs were 81 is where I started off, and then I gradually increased until 84 going towards the last leg. And still, that was, I don't know, like 190 days, something like that. And then another egg was 210 days. So I didn't change it any higher. I just kind of left it the same now at 84, not really gradually going up or anything like that. But my eggs are hatching out roughly around 170, 180, give or take, for mangrove eggs. But the Kimberleys are, I haven't really had too much success. So around 100 something days, is where the ones that I was able to work out and keep alive for some time. But yeah, man, it's I don't know, man. It's nail biting, right now. I'm at a stage where, like I said, I was just 6 months ago failing, now having more eggs, going through the motions again. I sort of had bad eggs just this last clutch that was supposed to hatch. A deformed baby and another baby that basically died in the egg, but it was really small compared to what they should be. And so I kind of just took that as, all right, these were bad eggs to begin with. Let's just not really count those, right? I mean, they are counted, but they're not really counted because they may have been just bad to begin with. So I'm now working with some other eggs that are a little bit better and going from there. But yeah, just really trying to figure things out, man. It's a hard one, just because you're not going to get the answer, even if someone told you that was the problem, right? And maybe someone can pinpoint it for you. You're not really going to know until you get your results, and that's either dead or alive babies. That's simple as that.
Yep. And there's something else maybe we'll come back to, but I'll drop it right now for people. You're going to have more problems visually, if you can look at your eggs and see that they look a little iffy, maybe they look a little weak, you're going to have some more issues. Okay. You're going to have to develop some more tricks up your sleeve. But the truth is, ultimately, you might be hatching a weaker baby, or something that might be wrong from the start. Okay. This is all part of it too. You'll have to take that into account. Maybe sometimes the amount of work you'll put into hatching that weak egg maybe might not be worth it. Now, I'll let you guys make that decision when you get there. But when you get those glowing eggs, when you dig them up and, they just come out perfect because the dirt doesn't stick to them. They're that nice, smooth, white shell, and you just know it, okay? Especially if you see infertiles and fertiles side by side where your animal nested. There's not even a chance to mistake it, even though most of us incubate them all anyway, just till we're sickos. I think we're a little twisted in the mind. We got to see them turn brown and smell a little bit before we're going to give up hope and throw them out.
Yeah. What are some more bad signs? All right. So indenting from the bottom. bad.
Yes.
Sweating too much, especially too early in, not like at the last leg. Okay, I can see that.
Right.
It's releasing the moisture from within the egg that it's stored, and the texture of the shell also changes. It starts at a kind of firm ping pongish, but then it becomes leathery when they're ready to hatch. Okay, so there's a change in things. So you don't want to misinterpret that as bad always, but your eggs are going to go from smaller to bigger, and then they're going to decrease again, sort of, and then hatch. Okay.
Right.
Now, some more bad signs are obviously smell. It's basically dead. Try not to mess with it too much, but your quick lift, angle your light through from the bottom diagonally so you can kind of go through the whole egg, or run it. You move it along the egg, the light, and see if your veins are all there. Try to be quick and swift. Put it back, but if it's all black and you don't see anything, no red veins, stuff like that, and it's starting to smell, probably dying or dead. What are some other bad signs? Now, okay.
Sorry. I'll jump in there too. My clutch of sand monitor eggs, it started off as 10 great looking eggs. Couldn't tell the difference between any one of them. Not that anything looked different. They were all great. Dirt didn't stick to them. But when I put them in and started incubating them, I think they took like 4 weeks to even show any signs of veins in their wing.
Yeah, that's very typical. That's actually decent. So I've had eggs take as long as 2 months to develop eggs.
Nerve-wracking.
Right. And so I'm just like, all right, I'm going to leave you there. And then all of a sudden there's some life later. But sometimes it's a little while.
It took another month in my situation where 4 of those eggs, they never developed veins. The lights never came on. And then about another 4 weeks, they still looked good until, like Kai said, they started to dent on the bottom. And then over another couple days, you start to get that light, like crusting of mold, that light layer of mold start to grow. And then they're bad. But I had no clue from the beginning. They looked good.
And what you want to do is since we don't always know what's going on inside, right? It's a guess at best, unless they're really bad or, hard, black, and moldy. And even sometimes the moldy eggs still hatch. That really ugly egg still hatches. So those can be misread as well. What he mentioned earlier, when you don't always see veins or an embryo ring at the very top of the egg, it doesn't always mean that it's not fertile or it's a bad egg and you're going to talk to it. Okay. Now, not just the fact of parthenogenesis, but just the fact that it also will take some time for those to develop a little bit. All right. Now, some, those signs where it's moldy, it can be springing all kinds of mold and it'll still hatch. It'll look all shriveled and black and it'll probably still hatch. But once there's that smell, and then there's a sweaty slime that covers it. That is the key thing where it's bad. Okay. It's a sweaty slime. It's not. It's I don't know how to describe it other than that. It's kind of nasty. When you pick it up, it'll be stuck on your fingers, and the egg itself, you can probably stick your finger to it because that's what it's like. Yeah, and it's not too pretty.
It's like smelly egg yolk. Smelly yellowish egg yolk that is now on the outside.
Now, going from egg looks and what's good is bad and what's not so good is bad as well. I mean, what's bad and what may look bad but not. Okay. Egg oocytes, or these dimples or craters and or bumps on the eggs. There's a couple different types. Now there's like a more like a hivey bump where it looks like the egg is having a bunch of little hives on it. Okay. Now those, I'm not exactly sure what causes that. It could be from them keeping the egg too long or not enough calcium. Okay. And so any of those disruptive looks on the egg shell is either eggs held in too long or not calcified enough. And some of those eggs, though, I've had still hatch. Okay. So it doesn't mean that it's detrimental and they're all just going to die and you're just going to throw the eggs away. Don't do that either. Okay. Still put them in the cooker. They're going to be white and stuff like that. And if they turn and mold and shrivel up and turn black, go ahead, cut them open, toss them. But I still had eggs hatched from that. And then I have a friend right now who's got some tree monitor eggs that have the same thing, and we thought they were bad until now they're getting close to hatch. So, I don't want you to look at some of these possible norms that people are seeing as infertile or what people are taking as infertile, and assuming that that's what's happening to your eggs. There's just much more to this science than there is, and so than we know about. And for me,
I got to touch on that real quick. The 3 peacock monitor eggs I have right now, and including the original 13 I had, they all had oocytes on them or some type of little crater on them. But you know what? I'll send you some pictures and get your thoughts on them, because they kind of look almost uniform to me. So I don't know what to make of it yet, but they do have veins. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Right. Now, man,
sorry, I threw you off.
Oh yeah. Man, you messed me up, man.
You're on the roll.
Yeah,
but you were talking about just because
I had all those egg looks, right, or egg symptoms. Basically, I messaged Biowak, which is almost like a infinite portal for information for monitor lizards, both within the hobby, the zoo type stuff, and in the wild. You get all likes of the monitor world, and so I would ask a lot of the experts there, because people from all over the world hang out on Biowak, and I would literally ask them, hey, what's up with these eggs? They don't look too great. I want them to look pearly white like everybody else's. What's wrong? A gentleman was telling me, hey, this is the liquid calcium I use, and try this, or use more calcium than what I was using. And I mentioned this quite often, because I want people to understand how much calcium my mangroves and other monitors take to make eggs. But I don't just dust twice a week and 3 times a week, or that's what is recommended for most reptiles, is just a couple times a week, right? I dust daily, if anything, 90-95% of meals, and I dust often, not heavy coated, but just enough regularly daily. And now my eggs are pearly white and smooth, and that's another goal achieved. And I felt like what I was doing was underestimating them, and also going by what people were telling me, and it was hindering my monitors, really. And so picture if I were to not do something different and change, right? Basically adopt something though that someone recommended me, which I thought was going to be detrimental to the lizards itself, right? People always say, oh, it's over calcifying. Oh, you're using too much calcium. What about over calcifying? I mean, dude, I'm not having that problem at all.
Right.
And so if I were to stick with that, I'm just going to do it twice a week, my animal would probably be suffering right now, because I would still try to breed her, still with the same focus and still with the same game plan, rather than changing it or doing something different than what I was doing. That's where I hope a lot of you come to think, where even myself, man, don't just take my word for it. Test that,
right.
Put it to use, see if it works for you. Because again, there's many things that are it come to play when you're coming to a conclusion for the type of answer you want and stuff like that. Temperatures from the outside, the room, using AC, just your natural weather, all that stuff like that. So
right.
Plays a big part.
And for the people out there, don't be afraid to try things, especially when it's your animal and you see something going on, whether it's with your egg clutches or with the actual animal, something to change in your setup. Make those changes. Try it out. Share with me and Kai. We'd love to listen to. We understand there's people out there that are doing all kinds of crazy stuff. There's people that don't even really pay attention to the internet, and they've been hatching animals all along, and we probably don't even, there's a few out there I know of, but there's probably more of them that we don't even know what they're doing. They don't really share. They've just been doing it this way for a while, and
I think a lot of No, I don't want to be disrespectful because that's not what we're trying to do at all.
Here we go, Kai. Here we go. Let's do it.
No, it's not what we're trying to do at all. Because, man, take what the internet tells you sometime as a grain of salt. You know,
Yeah.
Just you don't want to just take it all word for word and just think that it's going to apply to everything within monitor lizards. There's always going to be, again, that wrench in the road, or more so of just something that's going to be different. You know, now let's say, taking for example, some people are reading off the internet, like off Google or something like that, and then taking it and applying it to this, where some of those, it's not even going to really apply to captivity, you know? And so you want to, like, for example, some lady was comparing the size of an adult water monitor to an adult Nile. And really, sure, the water monitor is going to get a little bit bigger, but here's that wrench in the road. Again, not all water monitors are going to get that big too.
Right.
There's like speckled water monitors and coming eye that don't get that big. And I heard that also the Sambava line and stuff like that, the those localities basically top out at about 5-ish feet, you know, not the 6, 7 foot, 8 foot monsters that you would see in Sri Lanka or something like that. And those are another type of water monitor, you know?
Right.
So there's where those things, it's just, yeah, man, you're going to have to really do more research, and there's just so many, it just doesn't apply to every single monitor, you know?
Or one that you pointed out, Kai, is just in this conversation. You're right. Dwarf monitor eggs, in my experience, act a little different than now the sand monitor eggs, something bigger. I see the dwarf monitor eggs right before they hatch. In my experience, they usually dent a little bit. They turn a little bit more of a yellow or brown color. And they feel a little bit different. And then they hatch. But I don't start freaking out anymore. Within that last kind of 2 weeks, I would say, I see them start to dent. I used to freak out, but now that I've seen it enough times, it hasn't caused any issues. All the babies hatch, even though the egg turns a different color and starts to dent. I didn't see that with the sand monitors at all. It was just an egg, and then all of a sudden there's slits in it and a baby head's popping out, you know?
Yeah.
So
exactly here. Sometimes it's not as, it's okay, the whole, right? Just to describe it for the new keepers or the new possible breeders, it's the egg typically fully formed. It looks just like normal, right? And then it starts to do things like sweat and dent and all this other stuff, right? And these are normal tales that people will tell you, even myself, this is normal.
Right.
Sometimes it's not at all. These eggs are going to just swell up and poop, pops out a little baby. No warning sign, right?
Right.
No warning sign at all. And man, did your sad Flavius also take 267 days?
Oh, okay. We'll touch on that. To be fair, I've been talking a little trash to Alex over there at Sim Container, and
we love you guys.
But yeah, absolutely. Mine hatched at like 180 days. Okay, so mine were laid after his. I had the first clutch that were infertile, and this was my second clutch, and so in between there, he had a clutch laid. So of course, natural progression, his are going to hatch first. So I'm kind of bouncing it off of him because it's my first time with sand monitors. You know, he's like, "Oh yeah, mine are like 210 days," and I'm like, "Okay, mine look good." You know, I could kind of see the baby forming in there. And so, yeah, about 180 days, mine started hatching. And now I'm messaging him like, hey, what are yours doing? Just because I'm trying to gain information and knowledge too and bounce this off of people. And since he's incubating them or has been incubating them this whole time, the same time I've been incubating them, you know, he's like, nope, nothing yet. Nope, nothing. Yeah. So 267 days. That's
a whole year.
Yeah.
I quit.
That's almost 90 days difference, you know, in between, and they're the same animals. So there's that too, you know, they could throw you a wrench. I don't know if his I think I have mine set at 86. I think he might have his set at 85, maybe 84.
Right.
So maybe that has something to do with it. Or maybe they're a little cooler wherever they're positioned in the incubator themselves, all these things. But again, if I were to tell you, somebody that bought some babies, and I were to say babies hatch at 180 days, and then yours are, yeah, it's your first time breeding, and you're up to day 260, or probably around day 200. You're like, they didn't hatch in 180 days. You're sitting there with a knife or some scissors, like, I gotta cut them open. And yeah, you're stressing, and you can possibly, if the egg looks good, the veins are good, everything looks good, just wait, just be patient. The baby's
this is where micromanaging can be very bad.
Right.
So, if you're peeping it at every 5 minutes and you're opening it and you're checking the egg, it loses all this moisture that it could be retaining and to do what it needs to do. Right.
Right.
Bothering it and disrupting it. I mean, a little bit of movement is fine, but you can also disrupt it. So,
right.
Now, rule of thumb here for the monitor beginners that are going to be wanting to breed, we don't cut eggs. It's the way the veins are. It's just the way the eggs are built. You just don't cut it. Now, okay, if they're dead, sure, we're cutting the egg to find out what happened. That's just part of science. But and if the egg still looks alive, still looks like it's going, it looks like it's fine, it's not indenting, it's not doing nasty sweating, it's not any of that. And even if they were doing that, leave it alone. Just leave them alone. Like you said, if someone were to be stressing over it being 180 days, but really your incubator is off by a couple of degrees and now it's going to be incubating a lot more longer by a couple months, you just stay patient.
Right.
I'm a nail biter myself. And I'm also super high anxious and all that stuff like that, where I'm looking at my incubator all the time, but I try not to be going in there being invasive and messing up the current flow. Again, micromanaging can be very bad at this point. So you don't want to be doing that. And now if the animal has slit and now the egg has been penetrated, air has been flowing through, you can, from that angle, point your scissors upwards and cut along that slit, because now oxygen has been able to flow through. Right. And so there's you're less chance of cutting something important or blood vessels that may run through the thing currently. You want to hold off. So, but Absolutely. If it's go ahead and tear. I give it a little tear and then I only cut what I lift from the egg. Right. So I'm not cutting into the egg. The scissors are not diving into the egg at all. It's at a upwards angle slicing. And I then tear it as much as I can, take my little picture for the gram a little bit and then put it back, Yes. You can manipulate it a little bit that way. It is somewhat safe. But again, you're going to be very, very still, kind of just lift up, do your little, you basically got to use force, but with just in a tiny couple inches of what you're doing. So you're like, trying to, I don't know, tightly fit a little puzzle piece together, or more so tear it apart and try not to disturb the baby.
Right.
I don't want you to do that too much, even though you can. I'm really breaking down what you kind of can and can't do. But, if it just spurts out and the egg is still not fully developed, in a way, it's not really too bad. A lot of times I see them pick up from that, even if they didn't digest it. But that yolk gives them the for not eating a couple weeks as their babies.
Let them soak up as much as they can.
Yeah. And so leave them alone. Let them do their pip. Try not to harass them too much. Let them soak up for a good day. And everybody's thing afterwards is all different. Some people put them right into the enclosure, fully decked out, all that. For me, I take them out. I set them on dry paper towel, and I basically get that umbilicus area to dry up. So when I do put them in their enclosure, it doesn't get infected, because most of the enclosures are kind of humid, and I basically want to limit that possibility at all.
What I've done recently, just to touch on that, is I've been so in the sim containers, obviously if one hatches, then it's out and run around the sim container. As soon as I see one starting to hatch, unless they're all slit at the same time and I'm seeing faces, then I don't worry about it. But in some cases, dwarf monitors and now the sand monitors, I've had an egg hatch like 20 days later than the rest of the clutch. or a week later or whatever, I'll take the eggs that I know that are going to hatch. If I'm afraid of them turning an egg or doing something crazy, I'll take those out and I'll put them in another container inside the incubator. And then I'll come back 3 to 5 days later sometimes, and then I will pull them out. And for the most part, what I've noticed is that any remaining umbilicus that was on there has fallen off.
Yeah.
And they've just been in the incubator. And then when I throw them in the cage, they go, what has been happening? They go right to basking, they're sitting there, and then give them an hour or so of that and dump the crickets in, and the chase is on, man. And it's just boom, boom, boom.
For me, imprinting is immediate, right as that first tongue flicks. I'm putting my finger there, letting them get a feel. Mangroves are little jerks, though. Even if they're captive, they're basically pretty. They're irritated all the time.
Yeah.
And so they're kind of spurring around, running and stuff, probably even biting already. So I kind of really get them imprinted on me, get them used to me as possible. My setup for babies is bare. It starts off as paper towels, some cork tubes, some cork flats, and a little water dish.
Mm-hmm.
I do. This is a kind of an argument, but I keep babies roughly the same temperature as I keep adults. Well, for babies, they're okay with the 115, 120 surface temperature, though. They're okay with that. For a breeding adult, might need a little bit more. But as you see, I'm not strickening them from having a hotter surface temperature where they're going to need it. So, some people say, oh, keep them cooler because they're little babies. In a way, you don't want to cook them, but they can still handle still within the small scale for what the lizard needs, the same, and it's the same thing that adults would basically need is warm area, cool area, hotter basking area. The rest of the cage is relatively like 80s or so, like that. The cool side is dry, and that's how I kind of have them set up. It's more bare. And then maybe after a month or so, I'll throw in some bedding, and it'd be very shallow,
Mm-hmm.
And still at this time, I'm tongue feeding. I try not to grab them and like pester them, because then they're gonna learn that I'm a jerk. So I just tongue feed, just put food in there, and what I'll do is not feed them for a few days. They'll get really hungry and they'll come to me, and so then this will be a normal recurrence. This is what I'm doing with babies outside of now just hatching. You're the process from actual breeding, getting them to lay, and then incubating and then hatching them, right? Those are especially the last two parts that I just mentioned were kind of hard, so not all of them, not everyone is able to achieve that. But then when you get to babies, even though it's a very glorifying part, that can also be very difficult. Babies can be jerks to each other too. They'll rip off limbs and tails if they eat all crazy, or they'll be dominant just to be dominant over a spot, learning what to do. Some take it too far, and some are more casual. They're just a little nip here and there, but you want to really kind of get an idea of what you're doing with the amount of babies you have. Just realize that they're all little carnivorous little gremlins, and you're gonna want to focus on getting them to eat properly, shed their toes, tails without, because when their toes and tails are very small, they're like the tips are like lead pencil thin.
Oh gosh,
so when it gets dry and brittle, that'll just basically break off with the quick whip or something like that, and then you end up missing a piece of the tail. Or same thing with the toes, where it's Kimberleys or peach throat monitors or things with very thin, very fragile toes as babies, right? You can basically lose them if it's kept too dry, or they get bumblefoot, and you can also lose it then too. So it's a balance between both. I do not keep babies as humid as I do adult enclosures. I let it evaporate and spray it again, and then evaporate and spray it again if I need to.
I do the same thing.
It's not dense at all.
Yeah. I think it's actually I think a lot of times we're keeping things too humid, to be honest. And I think that leads to its own problems, including losing toes and tail tips too when they're too humid. I keep them drier.
The assumption, let's say when you're doing studying, right? and you're studying Indonesia for one. And, you know, they're going to tell you on the internet that it's always humid there, right? And or it's always stays consistent because it's by the equator, something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for me and my enclosures to achieve the right options for them, they go as low as 30% humidity, and then as high as 100 within the soil, you know, things like that. And when it's really, really dense and I spray it maybe once a week or something to bring the thing back up, then fine. But for the most part, it gets to drop down and it'll actually come to a low where I have to spray it again. Now, even if my enclosure, the ambient humidity within the enclosure is relatively dry, like 40, 50, maybe 55, 60%, the soil that it gets to escape into or dig into is 80 plus.
Right.
It can sit in it. It can sit in the moist soil. That's the option that you want. I was actually talking to a current keeper today where she had a Varanus melanus, right? And these are favored by a lot of people. And basically, she had the same thing that I just explained, where she did her research trying to keep humidity at 85, 100%, because she thinks that it's just so dense where they're from. And it can be, yes, because it's just such a vast volume and large space for us little people. But within the enclosure, you actually have to achieve very many different parts of humidity, you know?
Right.
And that's right around the lamps are going to be a certain percentage, which is low because the lamps are naturally drying it out. And then maybe your cooler side is going to be a little bit more humid, or when the lamps are off and then kind of the humidity gets to flourish a little bit, it'll be a little bit more humid, you know? But your balance between somewhat dry and somewhat humid is your key, as long as you can stick with those.
Or providing the animal. Yeah. You know, it's much easier to provide a humid area in the cage by use of a nest box or something, rather than to provide kind of vice versa. You flipped it, a humid cage with a dry area. So, and, you know, a lot of the, I can't speak for the Indonesian stuff to the same degree, but a lot of the Australian stuff, it's very dry there sometimes, but then they can escape into their areas in the ground. And so you're just providing them, and the take on it I do is I'm just providing them that retreat for the same purposes, and they utilize it just fine. So I'm fine operating in the maybe 20% humidity for some things. I don't freak out because I know that nest box is over there. They can go in there, and then I will supplement with spraying. That's how my own husbandry, for my purposes, that's how I keep up with everything. And it works great for me, you know. Some people keep a constant humidity and it works fine for them. So experiment for you. And I wish there was a recipe that worked for everybody, but if you go through this process that we've been talking about, eggs, incubators, and you're able to have babies, you start right back at square one with those babies. Okay. For your environment, take some cues from how you keep the adults, but for your environment, you'll have to know how these little fragile toes and tail tips do
work.
Yeah. And you'll have to address any issues that pop up for your location in this world and the kind of humidity and temperatures you have access to. So that's just a reality, and, play around with it. Always ask questions. Just don't take one answer as the only answer. So
don't try not to, I mean, what I meant earlier, is, I mean, you're going to get a lot of information kind of maybe across the board, or some things that will stick, but they may not work for you. Keep that in the back of your mind, though, that is an option if one day you needed to use it again and it applied for you. Let's say a wire cage in California, too dry. But a wire cage in Alabama or a wire cage in Louisiana or Florida, probably get away with not a problem at all. It's just so humid. And, it's, for me, it won't apply here, so I can't use it. But if that situation came where I moved to Texas or Florida or wherever, I'll be using much more ventilated cages just because the humidity is so much more dense.
Absolutely. Man, I want to keep some stuff outside. I really do.
I know, it's just so hot. I actually I actually got rid of everything that was outside. I
Yeah.
just rehoused it all, and I was like, you know what? I can't have all these things out when it's 100 degrees. I can't move them in right now because I'm doing so much, and so I'm just gonna find all the tortoises and stuff like that, better homes, and yeah, I just finished, bro, and uh, now I have to clear it all out to make room for the grasshopper house. So,
Nice. I like
yeah,
hearing that.
that's a secret. Don't tell nobody.
Oh yeah. Shush, shush, shush. I think we'll have a little buffer before this episode comes out, so you'll be set up by the time that hits.
I hope
But,
so. But yeah, I mean, this has been a great episode. I think we'd able to cover quite a bit for the people coming into breeding and having possible issues, things like that, what to run across. But yeah, anybody starting, your very first thing to do, if even before you get eggs, I mean, if that's your plan, you plan on breeding, get yourself an incubator. You'll
test it out.
Go through some errand trials, go through it.
Yeah, definitely know your incubator. I guess we're going to create a list of things like recommendations for people. Start your roach colony. Hit up Kai for some grasshoppers, and then get that incubator going. This is all prior to getting the monitor. So
because it can happen so fast. Like let's say if you're doing dwarfs, right? This is the time frame. If you were lucky and basically things worked out, and he was ready, she was receptive, and they hooked up immediately as soon as you popped the mail in, right? And let's say you got him recently, so your time frame for breeding and eggs can be anywhere from 15 to 30 days. Mm-hmm. And so, bam, you can already have eggs. Would 15 to 30 days be enough time for you to grab an incubator, go through all the seasons with it, and test it out and all that stuff like that? Not at all.
Nope.
So you think about how fast you can get eggs, would be you need to work that much faster to have your incubator ready. And getting it ready is one thing. Having the parameters you think are ready is one thing. Having eggs in there is a whole nother heartbreaking story. Yeah. So,
we hope you guys can look back on it, listen back on this even a couple times, and just to be fair, we're talking about our experiences and we're talking about what's worked for us like 75% of the time as the normal. But me and Kai are still talking to each other all the time, or other people like Alex. I talked to Alex over at Sim Container. I know, Kai, you've talked to both Alex and John. Just, hey, what's going on here? What's doing that? It's things I haven't thought about before that they might bring up.
There's guys that are like wealths of information out there. Like Jeff Easter. He's solid dude. He's basically gone through the motions a lot himself. Been in the hobby for quite some years, doing quite a few different species of monitor lizards. So, one of the he's a great wealth of information. Me and Jim pass information regularly across the board as well, because he's now getting into Kimberly's when he was doing just Argus before. So, now it's like a lot of people are all being able to share regular things, and even if we're not exactly able to pinpoint it for you, someone may have information that you can possibly take and apply.
Right.
And so, those two guys are just a very short list of a very long list of guys that can possibly help you.
Right.
There are very many friendly guys, as long as you are also willing to be, I would say, transparent with how you're messing up. Some people are very scared to admit that, shoot, I'm killing these lizards, or I thought I would be able to do this, but I'm actually not. And so help me, help me. And,
another thing to throw out there for you guys. Well, I'll touch on that real quick. I know a guy, he's got a bunch of black dragon eggs right now, a couple different clutches, I think. He's using the cocoa chips, basically, that are soaked, and then the polyfill that you would fill a blanket or a pillow with, stuffed animals. Layer that because it's hydrophobic. Okay, so it doesn't soak up water. Water doesn't remain in it. So the eggs are then on top of this material that actually doesn't soak up water. So there's not going to be water touching the eggs, but the moist cocoa chips or blocks or whatever they are underneath that. So there is still the exchange of moisture. There's evaporation happening. There's everything that needs to happen. And he trusts this system. He's hatching out, blackheads are black. I'm talking black-headed pythons are kind of known as being hard to hatch out. He's hatching those out. So he's having some good luck with it. I'm sure there, even in his experience, there's still room for knowledge, getting better at things with different species. But just to show you, there's a number of different things. I think I watched a video where Nerd was actually putting eggs on top of a substrate and then floating that in water, and hey, no one's complaining about no one. They're hatching out stuff. Okay. So,
Right.
So there's
there's many ways to skin a cat again. There's not just one way. So you take a look at how people are doing. Maybe give them a quick question on why they chose to use that certain thing. And let's say if him being afraid of too much moisture along the last leg of incubating and coming out of the egg, that whole suspension on that poly whatever that cushion, right? It basically alleviates the egg from all that moisture that would normally be trapped at the bottom on anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So,
man, my mind's going a little. I'm nerding out because another part of my interest in life and stuff has been backpacking and hunting outdoor gear for a long time. So, what does this have to do with reptiles? There's different materials out there. Like I'll just use Gore-Tex. It's a well-known one. That the whole idea behind Gore-Tex is that it's waterproof on the outside, but allows vapor to exit from the inside. Right. That's how people stay dry, because you can't just have a shell on where you're hiking and you're soaked underneath. You need to be able to get that moisture off your body. Okay. And stay dry, even though you're trying to protect yourself in like a downpour outside. I only bring that up because my mind's going with like, can you make a lid out of a material that isn't just plastic, like what we are using, but that somehow allows
breathing and gas and air to exchange
at a known rate, and
so that not to go against anything that you're saying about the thing that you're using, but Dave Kirshner, happy birthday by the way, Dave. He uses Glad wrap, and that allows air and gas exchange naturally.
I've seen that. I have seen that now.
And so that's what he uses. He uses a Tupperware container, and not just the thin ones, but the fairly decent thick ones, right?
Yeah.
You've seen the circular ones that have the latch, right? And I think there's a couple holes at the top, and him and Kenneth Jensen just use that Glad wrap over the thing where you're just touching it and it seals itself and you put the lid on. And that now allows natural gases to flow through without having too much moisture to leave.
See, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I haven't used it yet though. I want to get the right one, and I don't want to just use Saran wrap. I don't think that's the same thing.
Yeah.
So I think Glad wrap and Saran wrap are two different things that might look the same. So I don't know. I haven't used it yet, but maybe coming down the line, I may. Yeah.
Interesting stuff. Man.
Quite a few different things right now that I want to be incubating with as far as different materials. I've used perlite, vermiculite, and the turfus stuff, but I want to also look at different containers. And I'm currently my thing is full, so I can't just test stuff too much, but I think the next clutch or two, I want to put them in a different type of container and see how that works.
Right.
Just because I need to, testing stuff out.
That brings up, I'm fortunate that I have space right now, but there could be a time. It's going to sound like I'm puffing myself up. Sorry, everybody. That's not what I mean to do. Just hear me out. There could be a time maybe next year where the sim containers might be too tall. I might either have to add more shelves inside of the incubator, But I think the way the top works and the way I have the holes in the top, I don't want to put another sim container on top of a sim container. Okay. Because I want it to be able to breathe. But there's a lot of room in between there where if I found a method that worked differently, I mean, ideally, and it had side ventilation, I could do it where I could stack multiple containers up in the same amount of space and utilize the space within a little better. So, there's a future playing around with some different ideas, and we'll let you guys know. We'll share what's going on, what's new. But yeah, we're about the hour and 40 mark. So
yeah, just about ready for it's about conclusion because we covered it quite a bit. And if there was anything that anybody happened to miss, let us know. If you wanted to see if we can add more in a different podcast or answer a certain question for you, please feel free to message us. I'm available on Facebook and Instagram. My Facebook is just Kai Fan, KHAIPHAN. And my Instagram is big_lizard103. And my YouTube is Mangrove Mecca. It's a Mangrove and Mecca MCCA. And you'd be able to find me just about anywhere. I'm pretty easy to find. And Alan, what about you? Where can they find you at?
I'm on Instagram. It's origins_reptile. And then on Facebook, you can find me at just Origins Reptile. Go ahead. You can. I think I have my email and even my phone number linked on some of those. So find me on those. Don't find me by my name. I probably won't get back to you. That's no offense. It's just just the way that things work in my head.
We should decide to keep personal stuff and business a little separate. I mean, it's still good that you're doing that. I've actually merged the two, and so I have no separation now.
I'm trying to think. Oh, before we go, by the time this comes out, we'll see how things are. But there was a Timor egg that I got that was a little questionable, but it still looks good. But then more interesting is I have one Aki egg from a girl I produced, and it's a parthenogenic egg. She's never been. So the two animals I decided to hold back from this clutch ended up both being female. Now, one laid the week prior. They've both been kept together. One laid the week prior, a clutch of infertile eggs. Then the next girl, she was also cycling. She laid a week later, and one of those eggs is forming veins. Everything else was bad. So it's kind of interesting. We'll see how it goes. I don't know if there's been too many reports of this happening with Ackies. I don't know, but I can tell you it's happening right now. So it wasn't a mistake. They grew up in the house first. Once they were laid, they were holdbacks. They grew up in the house. They went straight over to the warehouse when they were about 9 months old. They've been at the warehouse for, I don't know, a little while now together. And so they've never been around other animals. We'll see how it goes.
Nice, man. So, it's quite a common thing now. Where more people are recognizing it, not throwing eggs away and incubating them. Parthenogenesis within mangrove, or not just mangrove, but monitor lizards have been more and more prolific as times come. For example, Tom Crutchfield hatched out a parthenogenic croc monitor. Really dope. That was for the world.
It is a nice looking baby. It's awesome.
For the world, for science, for mangrove, or sorry, I keep on saying mangrove, but for monitor keeping it in America, man, that's big news. The croc monitors themselves haven't gotten to be really cracked yet as far as people regularly hatching them out. I think it's more randomly here and there. People get eggs and not really going the distance. And so having them go the distance is very, very, very difficult. I think many people can get eggs. That's not the hard part. It's just the other part is hatching them. Congrats to the Crutchfield family over there for that success. All right, man.
Yeah, again, thank you to the Morelia Python Radio Network. Eric, Owen, you guys started all this, so we thank you for the work you put in front of us and the work you've done to kind of get the hobby here on these different platforms, and then bringing on different people, taking a chance with us too, so we can bring some good information. Hopefully, good information. If we're not, guys, hit us up. Let us know. Everything's been kind of positive, so we're open to criticism. We're not against it, but we're glad you guys are enjoying
just hit
it.
Alan with all the negative stuff.
I won't respond. Delete. No, just kidding. All right, yeah. Check out their website, MoreliaPythonRadio.com. Check out the Patreon, their store there. Check out their other podcasts. And also, as always, get onto USARK and support them if you're not already. They protect our ability to keep these animals that we love so much. So, all right, guys, we'll talk to you soon.